Okay, we should be recording now. So everybody, welcome to our workshop this evening on writing appropriate IEP goals. Um, this is hosted by the ARC Greater Prince William, and I am Samantha Thomas, and I have my co-presenter Amy Wall here with me. So
Hi.
we're so excited to have everybody tonight. Okay, so just some quick overview of what we intend for you to learn this evening. We're going to do a very quick overview of what is included in an IEP, just to give everybody a brush up. How to connect goals to people, using data to decide needs, how to develop goals based on IDEA and needs of a child, and how to write measurable goals. And then we're hoping at the end to have some time that if anybody has their own student that they would like to discuss IEP goals or see if theirs are meeting what would be a measurable goal based on what we teach you this evening. We're hoping to open that up to everybody to have some discussion surrounding that. So if you have a student with an IEP or a child with an IEP and want to pull those goals out, I really do think we'll have a little bit of time. We have it planned on being part of our workshop.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to share a little bit about us, and I'm going to actually pass it over to Amy first and have her introduce herself.
So I'm Amy Wall. I am a former special education teacher. I worked for Fairfax County for 7 years before quitting teaching in order to take care of my own children, as well as I kind of started getting into advocacy land and really enjoyed helping parents to understand the process and to come alongside and work with parents and schools to increase the communication between them and just really learn how best to advocate for their children. I hold a certificate in special education law and advocacy from the William and Mary School of Law, and I have about 16 years of experience in the field of advocacy. So not only have I taught and done advocacy, but I'm also a parent of children with special needs, of varying different needs. And so I have 8 total children, and 5 of my 8 have some form of special needs. And so I work on a daily basis getting help for them as well. So I've worked in the public school sector as well as the private school sector, and I also work with homeschool students. So I really do enjoy working with families.
Fantastic. And Amy is actually the person who first introduced me to advocacy as I sat on the other side of the table as a speech language pathologist in the schools. But my name is Samantha Thomas. I am a licensed and certified speech language pathologist. I have experience in inpatient, outpatient, and the school settings. I have a strong background working with children with language and learning disorders, as well as experience with AAC. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's augmentative and alternative communication. I am a mom of 3 boys that keep me very busy. And recently, I now have earned my certificate in special education and law and advocacy, and that is actually from St. Mary's University's School of Law down in Texas. So really, they just switched the location as to where they're doing that certification. And for those of you who don't know what that means, is it's just extra training for people who are educational advocates. We don't have a system, a licensure system, or any professional organization. So we are really working to hold ourselves accountable for our own continuing education as we practice. Okay, so next, we always like to know who's joining us. So if you are joining us here live on the webinar and workshop tonight, if you don't mind dropping in the chat who you are, why you're here. If you're watching the replay on the YouTube channel, go ahead and comment below and let us know, are you a parent, an advocate, a community member, an educator, and what you hope to learn from this presentation this evening. Okay, I'm going to see if anybody's using our chat. Okay, we have a mom of a 5th grader with an IEP, special education advocate right here in Northern Virginia. Okay, fantastic. So if you guys are able to drop it in, we love to hear who's joining us. Okay, Amy, I'm passing this to you.
All right. Oh, sorry, my computer's acting crazy. Okay. So what we're going to be doing now is just talking about just giving you a brief overview of what is included in an IEP. So in an IEP, you're going to want to have some background information. Sometimes they'll put information like how long a student has been in special ed, kind of what programs they've used, what kinds of accommodations that they have, specifically, at least for the last year. So kind of a really short recap of what the last IEP was, and sometimes further back. You also want to have the last eligibility that your child went through in that information as well. And it's going to just kind of be a snapshot of what happened there, kind of what their scores looked like on any kind of educational testing that was done, psychological testing, speech language, occupational, physical, anything that they've done to kind of gauge where they were at that point. Obviously, I hope that most of you would know by this point that if you have a child with an IEP, every 3 years the county is required to reevaluate your child. So you shouldn't have any longer than a 3-year period of information to go back on. In addition to that eligibility information and data, you're also going to have the present levels of performance. That's going to talk about where your child is at right now. So it's going to be where they're reading, where their math is at, where they're functioning at in writing, how their behavior is looking, all of those sorts of things. If you have a child who does not have behavioral needs, you may not have behavior information in the IEP. It may only be educational if it's a child with specific learning disability only. So things like that. But you want to know where your child is functioning. You want to have a really solid and good foundation of understanding of where they're currently at. That's going to be really important as we go into goals. Then the next section would be the goals. That's what we're going to be talking about really heavily tonight. That's what is going to put forth the educational plan on how the team plans to take where your child is at and bring them closer to age appropriate or grade level appropriate skills. You're also going to have their accommodations listed out, the things that they're going to provide for your child within the classroom to help them meet educational goals. And then their services, how much time they're going to be spending with a special educator, a therapist, a counselor, or in the general education setting with special education support. So that's the kind of the overview of what the IEP should look like. Then the next thing that we're going to look at is the importance of present levels. So the present level is that part of the IEP where we're talking about where your child is currently functioning at. This is a very, very important part of the IEP. This is going to give the baseline for where this current IEP is starting and give us a jumping board off of which to jump to write those goals. So it is going to drive your goals and what we're going to focus on for your child. It's also going to drive the level of services that they're given, how much time they spend in special ed, how much time they spend in general ed, all of that sort of information. Just note that some counties, who are specifically the ones using Virginia IEP in the state of Virginia, all of the present levels are listed on the same page together. However, some of the counties within Virginia do list it differently. Fairfax is one of them. Fairfax's present levels are listed as skills and needs. And so you're going to have the top part of it will say for reading, your child is able to do all of these things, and they'll talk about it in sentence form. And then the next section is going to say what your child's needs are, and it's going to talk about what the needs are for your child and where they're functioning and below the level of age appropriate. And it's going to be on the same page as your goal is listed as well. So just so in case you guys are different counties, if you're looking at your IEP, just want you to understand that it does look a little bit different depending on the county that you're in. Other states do it differently from Virginia, but you should always have a place on the IEP somewhere where it talks about your child's strengths and it talks about your child's needs for each academic area that your child has needs in. So if your child only has needs in math and reading, but not in writing, you would only have math and reading. But if your child has difficulty in math and reading and writing and social skills and a behavioral issue, then you're going to have present levels, strengths and weaknesses for all of those areas. All right, so Sam's going to talk to us now.
Yeah, and just to point out also, Fairfax, Stafford also looks different. So that is just something to be aware of. And again, you just want to make sure your child's needs, strengths, and challenges are listed in there. Okay, so I kind of like to use connecting goals to people because a lot of times we have these negative descriptions of our children being thrown around in either parent-teacher conferences. Sometimes you even see these in IEP present levels, which you should not. Some things that, you might see is this child is lazy and unmotivated. And it might mean that that child has a processing speed deficit and can't work at the same rate as their peers. So they often will decide to stop working or feel like they're really behind, and why is it worth it? You might see that this child is impulsive and annoying. And that might mean that the child has attention or inattention issues and can't inhibit impulses. They might make careless mistakes. They might blurt out. They might have trouble staying on topic in a conversation. And those things are things you might see in their schoolwork. You might see a child that can't make friends and is so awkward, and that might mean that the child has autism or social communication disorder and doesn't know how or why others are repelled by them. So I like to connect goals to people and kind of look at these characteristics that are usually presented negatively and make sure that these challenges are listed in present levels, but in a positive fashion. That not that the child's unmotivated, but the child struggles to complete work. Not that the child, you could put that the child is impulsive and describe, the child might blurt in class, or that the child has difficulty making friends or maintaining relationships. Okay. So the next part is when we're looking at needs and those present levels, our goals are really derived by the needs of the child, and that is going to be data driven. And I can't tell you how many times that I will have present levels that have absolutely no data in them, and we have these goals that may or may not be appropriate for the child, and we don't have data to support that goal. So in your present levels, there should be quantitative and qualitative information. Okay, there should be input from both parents and teachers from across settings. It doesn't necessarily just have to be your child's primary teacher if they're in elementary school, or their primary core subject teachers. It can be their encore teachers. It can be PE, art. It might be somebody that is working in an extracurricular activity with them in the school from a club. And they are not always dependent upon academic needs. Okay, a lot of times a misconception with IEPs is that it's only for kids that are getting bad grades. And that's not true. It may also include social, emotional, behavior, and functional needs. And a lot of times, unless those needs are glaring, they get glossed over or they're not addressed via a goal. So I wanted to share some qualitative samples, and these are just some, not all, but They might be writing samples from your child's class. It could be math worksheets, science worksheets. It could be classwork. It could be homework. It could be a school project. But these are just some examples of things that you might use when deciding needs on an IEP, because these pictures speak 1,000 words. So these in particular were an 8th grader's work. So, when we're hearing the difficulties with writing, we can compare it that way. The next part is quantitative samples. These might be, and when I say quantitative, these are often associated with numbers, okay? These are going to be percentages, percentiles, comparing your student to being above average, below average, on grade level, below grade level, benchmark assessments, tests and quizzes, standardized assessments, as well as data sheets. Some Virginia examples that I like to use because they're not always added to IEPs, but they are oftentimes there and really can help drive some data, some base needs goals based on data. Lexia, IXL, AIMSweb Plus, PALS, and DRA are very common ones for reading. Reflex, IXL, Moving with Math are common ones for math. A lot of times these are just used as part of the general education curriculum too. So their general education teacher might have these. HMH scores, which is somebody's name, it's an acronym for somebody's name, but basically it's for spelling and reading. A lot of times in elementary schools, they will look at spelling lists and determine if your child is on grade level with spelling using something like an HMH score. For reading assessments that are more informal assessments, but might give you more detail on like phonetic patterns that they are needing help with. You might have the GORT, the QRI, or the maze. You might have your child's SOL scores in there. SOL is required, especially when they get to high school, to continue progressing in the general curriculum. There are some exceptions, but those are weighted as part of progressing and getting a diploma, which is the ultimate goal of your child's IEP, is to help them get through their elementary and secondary years and be prepared for post-secondary years. IEP progress reports. These are so underutilized in our present levels. A lot of times the teachers spend a ton of time adding information to these, and you can add the latest IEP progress reports as baseline data for a goal. And then you may also see things like the Wyatt, the Woodcock-Johnson, and the Kaufman, which are all standardized assessments that are often used with eligibility processes, which are academic achievement and cognitive processing tests. And then the brief, the ABAS, and there's quite a few others when it comes to executive functions and behaviors. So these are just some examples, but if you're seeing that your child's IEP present levels doesn't seem to have data included in it, these are some of the different quantitative samples that you might be able to request.
All right. So when we start talking about developing goals, the first thing we have to look at is, what does IDEA say? And IDEA is the law that governs special education. It is a federal law that has to be followed. And so when we are talking about goals from that law, we're talking about statements that are measurable, that include academic and functional goals. So that's kind of goes back to what Sam was saying. It might be that your child is doing fine in academic areas and has good grades, but maybe they're not doing well socially or behaviorally. Maybe their executive functioning is off and they're not doing well with keeping up with classwork and being organized and staying connected with what the teacher's talking about. So the academic piece is the math, reading, and writing, and the functional piece is all of the other things that go into education as well. The goals must meet the child's needs that result from the child's disability and to enable the child to be involved in and make progress in the general education curriculum. So we're looking at, where does the typical child function and what is the general education curriculum teaching them? And then we're looking at, Where is the child at? Where are they functioning? And how do we close up this gap right here? And so those goals are designed to help us close this gap. And they also have to meet each of the child's other educational needs that result from the disability. So again, that goes back to that functional piece where it talks about their ability to participate maybe in PE if there's a physical issue. Maybe it's their ability to participate in fine motor activities or speech and be understood within the classroom and within their peer group. It could be social pieces as well. It's not just about reading, writing, and math. And then we also have to look at who needs to possibly take alternative assessments that are aligned to an alternative academic standard. And that would be the standard is the SOL. So if your child is unable to participate in the SOL program and they're unable to meet the SOL benchmarks, then the team can begin to discuss an alternative academic standard. And I've totally lost the name of it. Sam, help me out.
VSOLs now.
Yes,
They used to be the
recently
VAP,
changed it.
and they have changed it to VSOLs.
Yes. So the VSOLs are the academic standards that the state now has for children who can't meet the SOLs, but it still gives us benchmarks to be able to measure their progress by. Those children who do need to meet the alternative academic program, they require benchmarks or short-term objectives within their IEP. So we're going to talk about what do objectives look like and why would we use them a little later in the presentation, but just keep that in the back of your mind. Also, if your child has benchmarks on their IEP, it does not mean that they are automatically enrolled in the VSOL or VAP program. That does not mean that at all. It could potentially just mean the team wants a better way to measure the progress in shorter steps. And so we're going to talk about that more as well. But those who are entered into the VSOL are required to have benchmarks or short-term objectives by the law. All right, so when we talk about developing goals, we want them to be written in clear and measurable language. I can't tell you how many goals have come to me and they have just been unreadable, even to me. And I have had years of training on how to read an IEP goal. The language is unclear. They're using big words that don't really make sense. So really what we want them to be able to do is for anybody to be able to read them. So I oftentimes will take a goal to my husband, who's an engineer. He's very bright, but is not in my field. And I'll say, read this, and does that make sense to you? And if he says, yeah, I get it, I understand this, and can reverberate back to me what the goal is talking about, then I'm like, okay, that's a clear goal. But if he has no clue what it says, or he's questioning me and it's totally off the mark, then I can say to that team, look, this is not clear. This information that you put on here was not written in a way that people can understand it. And that's designed not only so that parents understand it, but so that if you have to pick up and move and take your IEP with you to a different school, a different district, a different state, that new team is able to pick up that IEP and implement it the way that it's written until they can write a new one for themselves. We want it to be in language that ensures progress from the student's present level towards a measurable goal. So sometimes Sam and I will get goals that look like, given a reading passage on the student's grade level, and the student is reading 2 to 3 grade levels below. Well, in reality, is this student going to make up 3 years worth of reading? Probably not. If they do, wonderful. We can always come back and rewrite a goal if a child masters it. but we want the goal to be written in a way that the child can achieve that goal within the 1 year that the IEP is written. We want targeted specific skills or behaviors that you can count or observe. So you want to be able to look at the goal and say, is this something that I can count? Bobby will be able to rope count from 1 to 10. Yes, we can count that. Bobby will be able to use his numbers to identify how many is in a group. Can't count that. Okay, we want it very specific on exactly what we want Bobby to be doing. We want to address a condition or a context. So we're talking about what we're looking at. Are we looking at a child with dyslexia? Are we looking at a child who is falling below being able to add 2-digit numbers? And we want to make sure that we are targeting that specific condition within that goal. Include a level of proficiency and a time frame. Proficiency would be how often are they going to need to be right? So a lot of our goals will look like 80% accuracy or 4 out of 5 opportunities. And a time frame could be within the year of the IEP, or a lot of the IEP's goals are written over a 9-week period, which is your marking period. So we want to look for, are they able to tell us when we're going to be able to meet this goal? Again, they can be revised throughout the year, but they have to be changed at least annually. So if you've got a goal that was still on your child's IEP last year, and it is the same verbiage and the same everything on it, the same measurements, the same skill, all of that, you have to ask the team, why do we still have this on here? If they haven't mastered it over the last year, is there documented reason on that present level why they haven't been able to do that? And why are we still expecting them to meet a goal that they haven't already met? So do we need to change the criteria within it? Do we need to change the skill we're looking at within it? Do we need to break it down further so that we can make manageable steps? And this might be one of those things where we add the objectives to, which we're going to get to in a little bit. And then last, in Virginia, the IEP is directly linked to and framed by Virginia's course of the SOL, like we talked about a few minutes ago. So if your child is able to complete the SOL, then all of their goals will be linked to the SOL standards, which you can find on Virginia's Department of Education website. If the team decides that your child would not be a child who is able to complete an SOL test or meet the standards, then you might be discussing that VSOL. Again, those standards are also listed on the VDOE's website, and you can pull them to be able to look at what the school is expecting your child to learn as you kind of go through to determine what the IEP goals need to be.
Great.
All right.
So in this next slide, I am going to reiterate a few things that Amy shared, because with goal writing, your goals need to support your child's unique needs. So while these goals do need to be linked to content standards, it doesn't mean it has to be that exact standard from their exact grade level. Most of the time, your student probably requires an IEP because they're not on grade level. So what you're going to do then is you're going to take the skill that is listed on the standard, and you're going to scaffold it back to wherever they are at. And then eventually you want to scaffold them forward to be on grade level. Our ultimate goal is to catch our students up and to close that gap as much as possible. As Amy mentioned, our goals need to target specific skills or behaviors that you can counter observe. And we're going to go into that using our SMART goal formula here in a moment. Be revised or changed annually. This is so imperative, and I want you guys to mark this down in your head and start going back through your children's IEPs, because this is something that has been coming up over and over again lately. And Alicia, you might be able to drop in the chat if you're seeing this as well, but I'm seeing a lot of copy and paste goals from year after year after year with no or minimal tweaking to them. So go ahead and check that, because that shouldn't be happening. And if it is, that means that your student's program probably needs to be tweaked. And then again, written in clear and measurable language. With that being said, I do think we're seeing a struggle with the schools' right goals. And I think it comes down to sometimes a lack of just mentorship and training and good goal writing. And so that's why we're here, and we're hoping that you guys will be able to take this back to your school or help develop your child's IEP with it, because you guys are an equal member of your child's IEP team. So you have just as much right to help develop these goals as the school does. Okay, so SMART goals. How many of you, go ahead and drop in the chat, are familiar with the SMART goal framework? Drop 1 in the chat if you are, drop 2 in the chat if you have never seen SMART goals, and drop 3 in the chat if you have, but you are not very confident with them. Okay, so SMART is an acronym, and sometimes the actual letter itself varies on what it actually means, but almost every single SMART goal that I have seen asks, is it specific? And this is looking at the condition or context and the target skill. So I'm going to go over this condition and context part here shortly to give you guys a little more clarity on what that means and what it might look like on a goal. But it really should have a specific targeted skill. And as you'll see, as we go through some sample IEP goals that we've come across over the years, a lot of times it's very unclear what skill the goal is targeting. Okay, you want it to be measurable. You need to have that level of proficiency, just like Amy was talking about. The A is the one I see change a lot. It can be ambitious, appropriate, obtainable. For the purposes of today, I'm putting appropriately ambitious because there is a lot of information out there, and I'm not a lawyer, but there's case law. If you go back and look and you're interested as a lay person to read some things, that our goals need to be appropriately ambitious in light of your student's ability. R is either realistic or relevant. For this, we're using realistic. Is the goal realistic to be met within the time frame and or your child's current level? And then time bound. As Amy said, it has a target date. And for an IEP, it should be no more than a year from the date that the annual IEP is developed. Okay. Yep. Alicia shared Andrew F. So if you guys want to look up that case, that was 2017, I think is when that ruling came out. I can't remember for sure.
You're right. 2017.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so now I want to get a little bit into goals versus objectives. A little bit of a disclaimer, we're not getting really deep in objectives tonight. We wanted to really focus on the main goal. However, I am seeing a lot more objectives coming out of IEPs. So it is something to be aware of and really understand how they play into the main goal. However, goals are really the backbone of the IEP. Let me grab sorry guys, I have multiple screens to get my notes here. And IEP goals are the overall target by a set time. It is where a student should aim or should be going next, okay? And so you want your students and your educators to understand that that's the outcome in mind, and it's not the outcome 2 years from now, 3 years from now, by the end of elementary school. It should really be the outcome of that end of that annual IEP year. So if the goals are our overarching framework, then our objectives are made for baby steps to support that goal. And they can provide a process for reaching that overarching goal. And they really kind of break down that overarching goal into clear steps that reach that end result. As we said, objectives are not always quite required, and it does vary state by state. Here in Virginia, they are not required unless a student is on a VSOL track. However, I am seeing a lot more SOL track students. IEPs have these objectives on them, especially with some complex goals. And objectives break down the larger goal, but should not match your larger goal. It shouldn't just be a copy and paste of the larger goal broken down into smaller percentages. Instead, it should provide students with the support they need to make a stepwise approach to the mastery of that main goal written. So as I said, we're not going to probably go into objectives too much tonight, but who knows? We might have somebody that shares an IEP goal that we would say, hey, this is one that we would consider objectives for. Okay, so this is a really, really great website that I'm actually going to pull up live here. So I'm going to stop sharing for a minute, make sure that I can pull it up. Okay, let me go there. And this is actually linked in VDOE. Can you guys see IEP tip sheet measurable annual goal on your screen? Okay,
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so this is an IEP measurable annual goal tip sheet, and this is actually put out by the Progress Center at American Institutes for Research. But I like it as a really quick, almost cheat sheet for parents and educators to go over what does IDEA say, which is again the federal law that helps special education students get what they need, and then the essentials of writing measurable IEP goals. So when Amy was talking about conditions or context, it gives you some underlying questions that you might ask to figure out, okay, what condition or context do I need? Okay, so some examples that you guys might see in these IEPs are oftentimes at the beginning. Given 30 first grade sight words, okay, given no more than 2 reminders, given prompts. Those are the contexts. Given an instructional reading level, or given an instructional reading level passage, or given a 3rd grade reading level passage. So those are really important to kind of give us that context of independence. And then we have the target behavior. And that is, again, the skill that we are looking to measure. Okay, what do we want the student to be able to do? Is this behavior or skill observable and measurable? Is it functionally relevant to that student? So some examples are the student might read 60 words correctly. They might learn a strategy to de-escalate themselves in a situation where they've become frustrated. They might ask for appropriate help, or it might be that they will seek appropriate peer attention. And then the level of proficiency, again, asking the questions of when will mastery occur? When can we expect it to occur? And as Amy said, most of the time these goals are written for a year. That doesn't have to be. If you have a student just starting out in special education and they haven't received services yet, you may say, hey, let's write a goal for 6 months so we make sure we come back and adjust our program. An IEP team can meet at any point. You can call an IEP team meeting at any point. From a reality perspective, it does take a little bit to get an IEP meeting scheduled. So it might be helpful to put that in place. But again, it just depends on your students' unique needs. Okay, and then the proficiency and timeline, again, as Amy said, it might be accuracy, it might be out of trials, it might have a mixture of 95% accuracy on 3 consecutive probes, and really a good measurable goal should have that proficiency criteria in there. Okay, so I will have this, but this also has other resources in it, guys. So I really wanted to share this, and we'll make sure that this is part of the slideshow and resources that get emailed out after this. Okay, so let me close that part out. Okay. And back to our slideshow. Okay. So the next part is looking at how will progress be measured. Okay, and this is going to be a very key part to 1, understanding if a goal is measurable, and 2, if it is measurable, what ways will that data be collected, and will that measurement data be provided to you as a parent? Okay, and this has really been a source of challenge for us as advocates. And again, if I have any other advocates on here, you probably can speak to this. You want to choose an appropriate data collection method for the goal. Okay, you're not going to put observation for a phonics reading goal. You want some really solid data. A lot of times I'm having them put other and curriculum-based measurement or tally sheets. I'm strongly encouraging parents to add data sheets to other here because we're finding that unfortunately data sheets are not being kept regularly and they're relying a lot of times on just tests and quizzes and classwork, and it's not showing us data directly related to your child's goal. So I copied and pasted this. This is directly out of Virginia IEP. These are options that come up here, but not all states, or sorry, not all counties in the state or states have all these options, but these are just options for how that data might be collected using homework, using special projects, using checklists. And so we'll get into, we won't get into tonight specifics of these, but if you have any questions about, if you think that if you're unsure if your child's goal is being collected in a way that is measurable and appropriate to that goal, feel free to drop it in the chat or email us after.
And Alicia just said that she often asks them to say authentic writing samples. That is so important, just to make sure that they are giving you truly what your child is producing on their own, not just prompting and things like that. I would also say that it is completely within your right, and you should ask them with every goal, tell me how you are planning to measure that, and what kind of documentation can I expect to be able to see at the end of each quarter. And that will help the teacher to think through. I will say, as a teacher, it is really not uncommon to have your preferred box of what to check. Or a lot of times right now, I am seeing that other box checked and they're writing data collection. Well, guess what? All of this is data collection. So can you be a little bit more specific? What are you going to do to collect data on that specific goal that you just wrote? And what kind of information can I expect to see at the end of the quarter to prove that my daughter or my son made that progress?
Yep. Okay. So we are about to get into some sample goals and evaluating them together as a group. So go ahead and drop a 5 in the chat if you're excited to go through these sample goals. And I'm excited to share some. I will say that all of these goals have been off of IEPs that I or Amy have worked on. And we did not give any personally identifiable information in them, and we kept them as generic as possible, but we're going to go through, give you a little bit of background information as it pertains to that area of need, and then the goal, and then we'll work with you guys to determine if it is a SMART goal or not. So be ready to use your chat feature or come off mute if you're able to, because this is really where, instead of doing our webinar format, we wanted to go with a workshop format to get you involved in understanding why and how these are working. A little disclaimer, some people might see these goals a little bit different as to whether they're SMART, measurable, attainable, or ambitious, as I'm going to go through, realistic and time bound. There's some that are really concrete, and there's others that are not so much if you don't have the full background of the student. So don't worry, some of these are open for interpretation. Okay, so I will get started with this first math goal. This is actually a fairly recent goal that of a client that I've worked with. But basically, the background information is that the student is in 3rd grade and identified with the disability of autism. The data from the curriculum measure, this particular measure shows that the student is able to solve single-digit addition problems with 14.8% accuracy. So this student actually was only able to solve 48 problems in 1 minute, and 14.8% of those 48 problems was accurate. So This was the goal that was written for this student. Given double-digit addition and subtraction problems, the student will compute the answer with 80% accuracy. And again, the date here, don't mind the date so much. Let's pretend we're writing this for a year from now, okay, for that part. So I'm gonna kind of open it up to the audience. Anybody can come off mute, but or put in the chat. Do we feel that this goal is specific?
No. Hi, this is Alicia. I would say no, because double digit addition, subtraction, what is the range, right? And in the data, they were only doing 14.8% of addition. But again, we don't know, was the addition within double digit or was that within single digit? So I have a lot of, as an advocate and a former special education teacher, I have a lot of concerns with this goal. I would also ask the team, or I would suggest that it would need to be two different goals, right? Because, you know, the addition and subtraction, and if you look at the pre data, it doesn't say anything about subtraction because we don't know where this child is with subtraction.
Yep, those are good points. Yep, anybody else? Okay, so I'm going to go through, and again, this is kind of our first one. So Alicia's a skilled advocate, just like Amy and I are. So you guys are going to get some tidbits. And actually, Alicia, you had some really good points. And so we're going to have some kind of interpretation pieces here. So I'm going to go through.
And if I can say something, I'm not sure that it's realistic if they're only at 14.8% now, and they want the student to be at 80% within a year.
Yep.
I'm not sure that that's a realistic goal. Sorry.
Yep. Nope, that's good. Okay, so I'm going to go through my synthesis of it, and you guys have heard Alicia's on the specificity piece. So Alicia was very right. As related to this student, it may not be specific enough to this student's needs. The goal itself, if you're looking at it on its own entity, it is specific in that it is identifying what kinds of math problems are being targeted. Okay, so this is specific to double digit addition and subtraction problems, but going back to Alicia's point, no, it's not really specific to this child's specific needs. Okay, and that might add into some of those other pieces here. Is it measurable? Yes, we do have some form of measurability there. It has the 80% accuracy, but again, do we need a better range? I would personally add in addition to 80% accuracy on like 3 out of 4 probes, or 3 out of 4 different measures or tests that are looking at a child solving a problem.
And I'm sorry if I can just chime in there. Oftentimes I will say out of like consecutive sessions or consecutive trials, because if you do something consecutively, that really shows the mastery.
Yes, great point. So if you guys are listening as parents, write down that word consecutive trials, because as a speech language pathologist, that was almost always part of my criteria, because again, if they could do it with 80% accuracy over 3 consecutive trials or 3 consecutive sessions, I was so excited because that meant that the generalization was happening. Okay, is it ambitious? I put no to this because it's actually what I would call overly ambitious. And so it's really not, if you're looking at the A being ambitious, attainable, appropriate, it's not appropriate to the student's background. Doing double digit addition and subtraction problems when they're not even able to get single digit addition and subtraction problems fluently yet, that is creating an over ambitious goal that is likely not appropriate to that student's specific needs. And then realistic, again, kind of that same piece where is it realistic for the student to solve double digit addition and subtraction when they don't have single digit math facts down fluently? No. And then is it time bound? Yes, we do have a date when they want them to achieve it by. Okay, so from the audience, Do we have any questions with this goal in particular? Give me a 1 if you're ready to move on to the goal. Drop on to the next one. Drop a 1 in the chat if you're ready for me to move on to the next one. Perfect. Hey, Amy, I'm passing the baton.
All right. So we have another math goal. This was from one of our 8th grade students. The student is 8th grade and received special education services as a student with specific learning disabilities and other health impairments. The student received a 260 on math SOLs. Now remember that 400 is passing in the previous school year. Currently, the student has a D in math. The student's progress note indicates the student is applying strategies with 69% accuracy. Of special note, the student has had this goal on his IEP since the 5th grade. Progress notes indicate accuracy between 65 and 75% over those years. So the accuracy that they put on the progress report before, on this current progress report is still falling within that same accuracy level that has been on the progress reports over the last 3 years. So given grade level content, math strategies, and repeated practice, student will apply strategies to solve multi-step problems with 90% accuracy. So let's see what we think about this goal. So is it specific? Anybody want to take a guess at that? You can respond in the chat or unmute yourself. Tell us whether you think it's specific or not. Remember, we're talking about targeting a specific area.
To make it easy in case people don't want to come off mute but want to interact, drop an A in the chat if you think it's specific. Drop a B in the chat if you do not think it's specific.
So I'll come off mute just because this is what I do. So I apologize. I don't think it's specific because I often see goals like this and I'm like, what math strategies? What is the repeated practice? And he's going to apply strategies to solve multi-step problems. Okay, so is this multi-step problems with all of the operations? Is this multi-step problems with just some operations? When we say multi-step, what are we talking about? So I have, as an advocate and a former special education teacher, I have a lot of concerns with this goal.
Yep.
Yes, I would definitely agree with you that it is not specific.
Yep. So there we go. So, and the reason that truly this is not specific is there are so many areas of math, multi-step math problems. So is it word problems that the student struggles with? Is it algebraic problems? Is it geometry? Is it all of the above? And what part of multi-step problems is the student struggling with? Is it the math? Is it setting up the problem? Like it's kind of giving us very vague information. Okay.
Yes. All right. So is it measurable? You do have that 90% accuracy. So it is measurable. We can say he did it 90% of the time. He didn't do it 90% of the time. Currently, he's at 69% of the time. So we know that they've been measuring it. What it is, we don't know, but it is measurable. Is it ambitious? I would say absolutely not.
I was just
it is not ambitious. We don't even really know what we're targeting at this point. So again, there are multiple kinds of multiple step problems. So we have no idea what they're talking about. So we can't say that it's ambitious. Is it realistic?
No.
No, not at all. It's not realistic because, again, you don't really know what they're targeting. So how can we say it's realistic if we don't really know what they're looking at, what they're targeting? We don't even know what strategies they're going to be using for him to apply. So it is definitely not realistic. And is it time bound? No, it has no ending date on it. So here we are, we've had this goal for 3 years and we have no desire to end it. We have no end date for it. And so we're just going to keep this on here until he graduates. It makes no sense.
And my response to that would be like, WTF? What are you seriously? Like,
Yes.
So another point to this goal that I want parents to be aware of is oftentimes the goals will have written given grade level content. And again, I want to caution you on using that unless your child is truly on the cusp of reaching grade level content. That is always our goal, but I often find that our special education teachers are then just working on what's going on in the classroom in the special education setting and not necessarily targeting the specific skill that the child needs support in. And it's okay that they're getting support in other areas of math and might need a little bit of tweaking in how instruction is occurring. But when it comes down to the goal itself, they need to work on that goal piece. And so you'll see, I think I have a better goal. I don't think I have a better math goal coming up, but just be careful with using grade level content. And if you are going to use it, that's fantastic, but make sure that the skills in the grade level content that are broken down to the targeted skill at the level your student needs. Okay. So this next one is a reading goal. And I forgot to ask, as I have people watching here, I'm just curious to anybody who's willing to share, what kind of goals your students have on their IEPs. If you want to list them out and drop them in the chat, they'll help us decide if we need to speed through some of these other ones or not. I want to keep it relevant and not hone in too much on one area or another, but math and reading are often goals that we see on a lot of IEPs. So the background of this student is that they are in the second half of 4th grade, receive services as a student with SLD, which is specific learning disability, OHI, other health impairment due to inattention, and SLI, which is a speech language impairment. The latest eligibility evaluations indicate deficits in phonological processing. And that the student mastered, sorry for the typo, mastered SRA, which is a reading program, level B. So I'm going to tell you background, that doesn't mean anything to anybody. You really need to kind of equate what SRA level B1 means. Just so if you have some of that in your child's IP, it's good for educator to educator if they are using corrective rating or SRA, but you want to be able to equate that to what grade level they're reading at as well. So the goal on this one was, given phonics instruction, the student will orally read a variety of texts at instructional level while applying decoding strategies with 80% accuracy. Okay. So with that, again, I'm going to open it up to the audience. If you guys want to use the chat feature, if you think it is specific, drop an A in the chat. If you don't, drop a B. If you think it's measurable, drop a C in the chat. If you don't, drop a D. And I'll start with that. See if we get, or you can come off mute too, whatever is easier. Okay. Specific. Is it specific? We do not think it's specific at this time. Okay. And I'm going to go through. I'm putting a question mark here. And the reason I'm putting a question mark here is because the skill that we look to be targeting or maybe targeting is decoding, but we're not 100% sure if we're applying decoding strategies to fluently read with 80% accuracy or not. So I think it really needs a little bit more clarification on what area of reading is being targeted. So that's why I put a question mark. So yes, in all actuality, is it specific to this student's needs? Probably not, because we can't really discern what the targeted skill is. Is it measurable? Yes, I'm going to put measurable with 80% accuracy. Again, I would wonder though what we are measuring. Okay, so are we measuring that they're applying decoding strategies? Are we measuring that they're decoding accurately? Are we, what is that measurement piece? So again, we have a measurability piece in here. Okay, that's why Alicia put that down, but only in its own entity in its own right. But we don't really have, it's unclear what skill is being measured. Is it ambitious? Go ahead and drop an A in the chat if you think it's ambitious, and drop a B in the chat if you do not. Okay. And I'm going to say that that's questionable again. We don't have information about what level this student is reading at. Okay. So when I'm looking at, should they be on an instructional level, a phonics instructional level? I don't know. Should they be on a grade level? I don't know. And again, this is where that interpretation piece is down. And again, why Alicia probably put, nope, it's not ambitious because we don't have enough information. Realistic. Again, we don't really know if it's realistic or not because we don't know where the student is starting. So in this situation, I would be very, I would definitely encourage families to request additional data to get information about their actual reading level from, and I would say in this part, quantitative sources. Okay. And then, is it time bound? No, we don't have an ending date to this. Okay. So before we move on, I want to kind of gauge with people that are following along. I'm sure that we have some parents that have kids in the background, but is this helpful so far? Are you guys getting information about SMART goals and looking at how you might be able to apply them to your students? On a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being, no, it's not helpful at all, to 5 being, yes, this is great, drop that in the chat. Okay. Amy, you're up.
All right. So we're going to be looking at a student who is in the 3rd grade. He receives special education services as a child with a specific learning disability and currently reading a DRA 6. So given direct instruction, student will read a DRA level 24 fiction or nonfiction passage with 93% accuracy by November 17th, 2022. So, is it specific?
Amy, I'll have us kind of go through some of these because again, I think this has some good talking points that we can dialogue with. And if anybody wants to chime in, feel free, but that way we have enough time to open up for anybody.
All right, so it is questionable as to whether or not it's specific because we don't really know background information on how long it took him to get to a level 6 so we don't know whether he can make up that amount of progress within a year or not. So I would say it's not specific personally, and I would ask the team to tighten that goal up a little bit, as well as to put more information in the present level about where the child has been, when did they start remediation services using phonics programs and things like that. Is it measurable? It is measurable because we have that 93% accuracy there. I kind of question where they got 93 is kind of a weird number, in my opinion. I would be questioning, why are you using such an obscure number and how do you plan to get to 93%? the answer could potentially be it's part of whatever program they're using, I suppose, but it just seems kind of odd to me that they would pick that random number.
Oh, sorry, Amy. I accidentally muted you.
Okay, I think
I was trying
fixed
to mute myself.
Okay.
But Alicia had a question or a comment, I think, really quick.
Yeah, go for it.
You're on mute, Alicia.
I'm so sorry.
Amy, I muted you.
Sorry, no, I think I muted myself.
Okay.
For this goal, I would question, what are they actually measuring? So is it that they're measuring their ability to read? Is it that they're measuring their ability to answer questions? So when we say it's measurable, I think I would have a tendency to say no, or question mark, because I don't know what they're measuring when they say they'll read a DRA level 24 fiction. What does that mean? Right? I don't. So I just wanted to chime in because I'm not sure that this goal is actually measurable because I don't know what they are measuring.
Yeah. And so I think that's a really good point, because when you're looking at what a DRA is, for anybody who's on, a DRA is a developmental reading assessment, and it's used as a form, and at least in Prince William County, it's a pretty standard way of looking at reading levels. But basically it's looking at their fluency, it's looking at their decoding, and it's looking at their accuracy, and as well as comprehension. So it's putting all those basic reading skills together and taking that. So we may have measurability because it does look at accuracy of the words that they're reading. But again, I think to your point, what reading skill or what targeted skill are we measuring?
Yes, that is true.
So,
all right, is it ambitious? I would venture to say it might even be overly ambitious. Going from a 6 to a 24, that is a really lofty goal. And I would say that I would almost ask this team, hey, let's back that down quite a bit. And then if they hit the goal, we can always come back and revisit it and look at seeing what their progress is like and all of that, especially since we have no information in the present level about how quickly they went from nothing to a 6. But it is ambitious in the fact that they did hit a high number, but I would say it's overly ambitious. And I would challenge the team on this one for sure.
yeah, that's where you change the A to, is it appropriate or
Yes.
attainable, right?
Yes.
And actually, that should have been a question mark. I apologize, because again, questioning, is it overly ambitious? Is it really doing what a student needs to meet their unique needs?
Yes. Is it realistic? Again, we put a question mark, but I really feel like it's not realistic. Again, same reason. Is it realistic to expect a child who is struggling and who's, third grade and only at a DRA 6 to really be able to meet a DRA 24 without really good instruction? And even with really good instruction, I don't know, depending on what the working memory is, there's a bunch of other information we would need to know to determine whether you could get to a 24. I just don't believe that it is a good measure. I will throw out that even though Prince William does use the DRA, they're coming off of it. I don't like DRA as a measurable way. And both Sam and I try to take that out all the time. It is a way to kind of tick at and look at where a child is at, but it is really not a solid, strong measure of truly where they're at, because there are too many factors that play into the DRA, including how the assessment is given. So I would be really cautious using a DRA level in a goal anyway. Is it time bound? It is time bound. They gave us an end date of when we should expect the child to meet this goal. So they did well there.
So back to the DRA, I do want to reiterate the DRA might be a nice little benchmark to have in there to compare your child to where other peers would be or should be in their grade level. A DRA, when it is administered, it can be a little bit subjective in how it is done, and added up. So best practice is to probably avoid having that as a way to target any sort of reading skill. I would target the reading skill itself, whether that be decoding different sound patterns, reading fluently, words correct per minute, or the accuracy of how a child is reading altogether, or comprehension. Okay.
So Sam, since it's 8:15, do you think maybe we should see if anyone would like to throw out a goal of their own to get the group to look at? And then if they don't,
Yep.
we could do a couple more of ours.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and do that. Thank you for keeping track of that time. Does anybody have a goal that you'd like to share that is your own students that you want us to go over?
So I don't, but I'm just going back to the last school that you had because it had nonfiction and fiction. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I have a tendency to either say, okay, let's do short-term objectives, right? Because we need to know where they are with nonfiction and fiction, or developing a goal just for fiction and just for nonfiction. I think that goal is a little hard because we don't know what skill like they're targeting. But just as I'm thinking out loud and kind of looking at that goal, like that would be my suggestion is like the team, in order to really track that progress and how that student's doing, is to suggest developing short-term goals. I know, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this, or anybody that's on this call, is if they're not on VAP or VSOL, right? The teams are very hesitant to write short-term objectives. But my comeback is, okay, it's required for students that are on VSOL or VAP, but it doesn't mean that you can't write short-term objectives. Because if you have this really lofty goal that has all these steps in it, why are we not breaking it down? We need to break it down to be able to see exactly where the student is with that specific skill. And so then when we come back, we might be able to take out some of those parts or some of those components of that goal. So I was just kind of wondering like what your thoughts are. And I know that's kind of maybe a little bit to the side of what you guys asked, but when we're talking about goals and we see something that says, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, or we have nonfiction and fiction, I think it's really important. We have to hone in on those skills, right? We have to break them down. And if we put everything in the goal together and there are no short-term objectives, it's really hard to figure out where that student is. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I would agree, Alicia. And in that particular case, I would look at, if we're looking for a student to start generalizing into fiction and nonfiction, I would recommend having it in the main goal. But to your point, then in each objective, breaking down that they will read a nonfiction passage fluently with X% accuracy, or that they will decode a nonfiction passage and have it fiction passage, nonfiction passage under those objectives. So for those of you who are trying to decide, does my student need objectives or not? A lot of times in these reading and math goals are some really great opportunities to break down those skills into those steps, because there is a lot that goes into getting them to where they need to be.
Yeah, and that's a really good way to determine, does this goal need objectives or not? If they're listing more than one area that they're focusing on, then you need objectives, because you need them to break it down in data collection, you need them to break it down in how they teach it, and you need them to break it down in how they deliver the information on the progress for you. So if they're saying, addition and subtraction, then you can, you want to break that down into, they're going to do double digit addition, without carrying, double digit addition with carrying, then subtraction, double digit subtraction without borrowing, double digit subtraction with borrowing, break it down that way so that you really can understand if they're not making progress, why and where is the breakdown happening. So it's really important. If they're only targeting one skill, then it's okay to leave the goal as just an annual goal. So that's always the way that I did it when I was teaching. When I was teaching, we were required to have objectives. So it's kind of like the pendulum. We were at this point where everybody had to write an objective to every single goal. And then people started being like, we don't like this. And we swung it the other way. And now we don't write them at all. And it kind of drives me crazy as a teacher. We need to be in the middle where you need to do it for whatever is best for your student.
And I think short-term objectives are also helpful for writing, because I don't know if
Yes.
you guys have seen writing goals, or anybody in this, training that's seen writing goals, but it'll be like capitalization, punctuation, content, writing a thesis. And it's like, you have to break those down. So it kind of goes back to your same thing. So I think reading, writing, and math, those are really important if they have multiple steps that they need to.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So, it's either Andrea or Andrea, maybe, hopefully. It's raising your hand. So if you want to come off mute.
Hello, it's Andrea.
Andrea. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So do you want to share your goal out loud? Do you want to drop it in the chat? What's the best way to do that for you?
I have my IEP here. Well, my daughter's.
Okay.
But so her goals are just related to behavior. She doesn't have any problems with her grades. I mean, it is because of her executive function. So she doesn't turn in things on time and is just doesn't take the folder home to work on, or doesn't is just not well organized, and doesn't understand what the teachers are telling her to do sometimes. So the whole thing started in first grade, where she was very reactive physically to the other kids. So she would push them around if she would feel like she's being she would be almost, she just wouldn't understand the context clue, the social cues and the things that were happening around her. So she would be more frustrated because she wasn't understood and things like that. So they started her testing, and they said it's consistent with autism and ADHD. So they did an IEP, but it was very much teacher led. So she had on their breaks as accommodations that she could take, and basically the teachers would see before she would get very frustrated, and they would have her take a break or things like that, which now in fifth grade doesn't happen, because the teachers just, they're nowhere that near that connected with her, and they have a lot of students, a lot of stuff to do. So I guess, I don't know. So let me see here. Right now we have some very general 3 goals that are not, they're like remainders from that first one that she had, but now she's no longer like physically violent. She doesn't push anybody anymore. She's more introverted now. She's basically bottling things down inside instead of reacting outside, but she is still stressed on the inside. So a lot of times she would say things like, I didn't want to ask the teacher because I thought that I was going to start crying if I opened my mouth, and then so I didn't. So that's her main thing that's going on with her now. So the goals here.
Yeah, Andrea, why don't you pick
Yes.
one of the
Yes.
goals that you think might even be remotely related to what she still has going on, and see if we can help with that.
Okay.
And if it isn't, then you definitely want to get some updated data and revised goals.
I do need to get that, but I don't know how to get it, because I don't feel like the teachers are giving any input.
So that's really great. I'm gonna have you hang on at the end of the call here if you want, and we can share some quick strategies on that. And then also some resources of where you might be able to get some extra support if that's something that you are looking into.
Okay, I can give you just one goal just to quickly like give an example. Maybe it's
Yeah.
good for the so for example, it was given classwork, Diana will remain on task and work for a given amount of time with 90% accuracy.
Student will remain on task
And work for the given time.
for the given time with, what did you say?
90% accuracy.
90% accuracy. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. I didn't put any personal information up here other than just the.
I guess I could have copy pasted some.
No, that's okay. Okay, so I'm gonna share the screen for everybody to be able to kind of see, and we can hopefully work together then for this. Okay, so Andrea provided a little bit of background, not always turning things in on time, not well organized, doesn't understand directions. Previously reactive physically if she felt frustrated or misunderstood, and then has teacher led and information and accommodations to take breaks, and I'm assuming other things on there. And the goal that she's having us look at is given classwork, student will remain on task and work for the given time with 90% accuracy. So Andrea, I'm going to have you work through with us the SMART goal here. So specific.
I think not. I mean, remain on task. Okay, that's what you're supposed to do in life. You're supposed to be on task. But
right.
But it's so vague that it's everything.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's remain on task and work on given work.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when you're looking at the school, Andrea, what does on task mean for your daughter? Right? So it needs to be specific to her, because remaining on task is different for every student based on their needs, based on their disabilities, and based on the background. It doesn't say anything about her not remaining on task. It just says she doesn't turn things in time, she's not well organized, and she doesn't always understand direction. So I what does not well organized mean? She doesn't understand directions. Does that mean multi-step directions? Is she having trouble with, one-step directions, 2-step, 3-step? She doesn't turn things in on time. What does that mean? What does that look like for her? And so just looking at this, I would say, no, it is not specific, because I have no idea what remaining on task looks like for her and work for the given time. Again, there's nothing in the background that says she doesn't do that. So, I mean, I think, Samantha and Amy, you guys could probably chime in, but I look at this and I'm like, there's a lot of, I would have a lot of concerns with this goal, with it being a SMART goal.
Yeah. I guess some questions I would have for Andrea is, if she doesn't stay on task or work, some things that you could ask is, how long can she remain on task? Do you have baseline data in that? Is it that she needs,
that's a good point.
Yeah, does she need a lot of redirection and prompts to even do her work or sit down and do her work? And again, the time piece is, I think, where if this is a challenge for her, getting some baseline data on, just like Alicia said, what does it look like when she's off task, and how long can she stay on task, and what do we want to work towards in the next IEP year? And then what does 90% accuracy remaining on task mean?
I don't know.
Yes.
I've asked them, actually, how do they measure this? Oh yeah, we measure it. Okay.
Yeah. So this is a situation where I might put on 90% of opportunities. Okay.
That's probably what it means. Yeah.
Yeah.
Out of the observable cases, or something like that.
Or you could even do, if she's not starting, say she's not starting her task it takes her 5 minutes to get to work, then you're going to be working on getting to work within 1 minute of given directions, say, and then your measurement is the amount of time that it takes her to get on task. So they're going to be tracking, okay, on 3-3, it took her 7 minutes to start her work. And then it would be, you know, over, we want her to start her work and get going within 1 minute of the direction on 5 out of 6, you know, consecutive data collections or something like that. So we need time needs to be put in there if it's about getting to work, staying on task, those sorts of things. So you can, it doesn't always have to be a percentage, but you've got to be able to measure it somehow.
Sorry, guys. Didn't mean to switch to a different thing. Okay, let me stop my sharing for a minute.
Andrea, you said something about, yeah, I think that's what it means when they're talking about accuracy, but accuracy and trials are 2 different things. And so they need to be specific, and you can't, the goal that they have, you can't really measure that in accuracy. So I would highly suggest that they change that to, 90% of trials, or, 4 out of 5 trials, or whatever it is, because accuracy does not fit that specific goal on what they're measuring.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so I know we have another participant that would like to have their goal looked at, and that is totally cool if you're still on. Because we did have this going till 8:30. Amy, I was going to have us kind of wrap up the last few pieces of the presentation, share our contact information, and then I'm okay to hang out for probably till about 8:45 to go over some more specific goals with everybody. Yeah, if everybody, and then people that want to hang on can, and if you have to go, I understand putting kids to bed and that we're going a little bit over, and we appreciate you hanging out here with us, and we hope that you're learning a lot tonight. So does that sound okay, Amy?
That's what I was going to suggest too.
Okay, perfect. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. Turn to meeting. Come on. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we really were going to open the floor and take some time to go over things with you all. I have some resources, which again, we will have that will go out to you all. But I want to pull them up just so you can see really basically what they are. On VDOE, they actually have a standards-based individualized education program technical assistance document. And this has sample present levels and goals for these particular students with specific disabilities. So that could be a starting point for you to look at to see what a good IEP and present levels and some goals look like. So again, that will be going out. And then again, if you are a parent or an educator or somebody just looking to get more information, VDOE also has standards-based IEP information, training opportunities with modules, as well as sample goals and worksheets, again, based on different areas. So you probably won't be able to copy and paste them exactly, but sometimes starting with a framework and seeing what a good goal looks like, you can then plug in your child's individual needs. Okay, and then Amy and I usually have other resources that we share, but if you've been with us before, you can watch previous trainings on the ARC. But this, I'm going to go ahead and put this up. This is our information. I actually don't have my website on here right now, but or my correct email. Oh goodness, I took an old one. Okay. Sorry, guys. So Amy's information is all accurate on here. I took this from one of our other slideshows. You can contact me at sam@slpthomas.com. And I'm going to drop that in the chat, and then I'll just put the website. But if you guys have any questions or need any resources in the future, these are the ways to contact us. And we do several trainings for the ARC and we'll plan on continuing to do these as we move forward. So we really appreciate you all for joining us this evening. Amy, is there anything else you can think of with regards to our information?
Not our information, no. Okay.
Yeah. And so honestly, if you are somebody that needs more support with your child's IEP goals and or working through seeing if your child's IEP is written appropriately. We always encourage you to get empowered as a parent and learn about the IEP process and what needs to go into it. But don't hesitate to reach out to people that have experience and training in working in special education. You've heard from 3 of us here this evening. And there's also special education attorneys out there that can support. A lot of the attorneys in the area, if they think that, it's something that can be worked on with an advocate, they'll share, and refer you back to an advocate. So we just want you to know that there's people out there to help. There are free parent advocacy centers and ombudsmans through VDOE and other, and each county, I believe, has a parent advocacy center as well in Virginia. So those are places where you can also continue to look for resources. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead then and stop sharing again. And thank you all for joining. Oh, I have one more thing. If you guys are still on, Amy and I always love feedback on our webinars about how we can make it better. So I'm going to drop a survey in the chat. If you are able to complete that, there's that. But otherwise, we will go ahead and hang out here. And I'm actually going to
Stop
keep the record. Well, let me see. Is anybody else wanting us to review some goals that's on? You can raise a hand or come off mute.
There is one in the chat from Lisa.
Hi, this is Lisa. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
So my son is in double exceptional category. So a lot of his goals are executive function related. And I find it's very challenging to come up with something with a SMART criteria. First of all, it's hard to put measure. And second, I just from teachers' perspective, I don't even know how they are going to be able to collect the data because they will just have to sample some opportunities and then try to put the data, like feed the data into the box of the measurable the goals. And like, for example, this one that I throw out there, I see Alicia replied with some questions, and those are the questions that I have too. But if I ask them in the IEP meeting, it sounds like I'm on the opposite side and trying to be so specific. But I just don't know how to come out with understanding more specifically how they are going to collect the data to support the measurement in a meaningful way. I have so many other goals that are like about the social skills as well. It's highly dependent on the situation, the kids that he's interacting with, and his mood, and if it's his interested topic, it all can scale the data. So most of the time, I just feel like if the teacher is trying to help, he's gonna help no matter what the goal is. But
yeah, so I just copied and pasted this so we can share it on the screen here. This is a very loaded goal in my opinion. And
Yes.
it's taking, in my opinion, too many targeted skills and mushing it all into one goal. So really, I think to answer your question, what is being measured here? What's the target? And what does your child struggle with? So based on what I'm reading from this goal is, he may struggle to initiate a task or stay on task. And that they are looking to have him stay on task longer.
yes.
10 minutes for shorter assignments and 15 minutes for longer assignments, which,
Yes.
I mean, I know shorter assignments are shorter. Yeah. So I think what's happening is there's just a lot of stuff being chunked all together.
Yes.
And so, and then to your point, it could vary across, it might be in one class, he's really on task because it's a preferred topic. Is he in middle school?
Sixth grader.
Sixth grader. Okay, that's what I thought. Because this is usually where we start seeing the like variety of contexts and having difficulty in various areas. So, you know, if it's a highly preferred class, probably has no trouble staying on task.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in unpreferred classes, and that's where you might need to, you know, start talking about what classes are less preferred to him, where is he less likely to stay on task, and add that as part of the baseline data. So I know we're not quite answering a specific question to help you write a specific goal, but until some of those questions get answered and are added to baseline data, it's hard to really develop that goal.
In terms of data collecting, can the parents expect them to really have a timer on, and knowing this is a short assignment or long assignment, and timing when he's starting to pick up the pen and start working on it, and then timing how long he is on task? Hopefully by what he's doing, they are measuring if it is task related activity or going off and getting pencil sharpened and asking for a bathroom break. Those would be off task, but what's going on in his mind if he's on task, we cannot really know. So those are the challenges I see just in their shoes collecting the data. And then how many opportunities that they are gonna have to measure this. This might not be too bad, but for some of the social goals, I imagine the teacher has to be very involved with listening the conversation and then counting how many interactions they had. And then if he was on that topic, it's just, I can tell it's gonna be difficult. And I feel it's not polite to ask if they are measuring the progress that way, because that would be the way that ideally how it should be measured.
Yeah, well, you know, Lisa, I think it's fair for you to ask for
I
data
agree.
collection records. That is something that you have a right to as a parent, to find out how are they collecting data, and if they have actual a way to collect data. I would look at what the IEP says itself as to how they're supposed to be collecting it. I'm suspecting they're using a checklist and observation based on what this goal says, but do you see under, I don't know what county you're in, but do you see under the
Yeah, so
Fairfax.
in the progress report, actually, the teacher did give me some data for all the five days that were actually how many data points. So she put down the dates and then initiated with 5 minutes, yes. Attending task for 10 minutes, yes. So she's providing the yes to show that there is a specific measurement taken on that specific day. So
yeah,
and
so
she's already one of the better special ed teacher than last year. Last year, I didn't have any data in the progress report. It just gives me a number. So this year, I feel she was trying, but I don't know how exactly she's tracking the data.
yeah, so one other point then, Lisa, that I think you brought up that's really good. There is a difference between data collection, like running records that a teacher keeps, and the IEP progress reports. The IEP progress reports are often synthesizing or taking that data that they collect somewhere through something, either the checklist or tallies or however they've decided, and synthesizing that to the goal and hopefully providing you with an update with where they're at. But so just so parents are aware, those IEP progress notes are required to be given. The actual data sheets or running documents that a teacher might keep, they are not required to give those every 9 weeks unless it's explicitly written in the IEP, but you can always request those from the school and from the teacher. If you can ask the school, they may just make you copies, or you can do a FERPA request. But Yeah, so I mean, Amy, do you want to answer her question on is it reasonable to be asking a teacher to be measuring those things and how that's
About-
happening?
Absolutely. I mean, yes,
about
you
the-
should be asking them to measure that.
Mhm.
You should be asking them, how do they plan to measure that? And it should be that I mean, if the way that they've got this written, you do have to measure how long it takes her to start, how long it how long she stays on task for a short assignment, and how long she stays on task for a long assignment on 4 out of 5 opportunities per quarter. And they've got 3 different things in there. So they either need to break this into short-term objectives, which is what I would do, so that you can get a feel for all of those, or they need to make this 2 separate goals, one about getting started within the time limit of the direction, and one about staying on task during the duration of the assignment. And I wouldn't do this whole shorter assignments versus longer assignments. I would just be like, you know, boom, here's the assignment. She stays on task for, up to 15 minutes. And that would be the goal. And if the assignment only takes 10 minutes, then you can note that in your data collection, finish the assignment within 10 minutes or something like that. But this is too wordy, it's too much. And I also agree with what Alicia put in there is what are taught self-regulation strategies? Like, what does that mean? What kind of program are they using? Why are they even putting that in there? I like the
Yeah.
self-monitoring checklist because that's like, here directions start within 1 minute. She can actually check those things off depending on what the task is, so that makes sense. But the self-regulation strategies doesn't make sense. And really the only time I use self-regulation strategies is when a child is stimming or emotionally distraught, those sorts of behavioral things. And that doesn't make sense within what they're trying to focus on
because-
right here.
Yeah, I was also trying to push them to tell me what are the strategies that they taught him. And by coming out nicely, I was saying that I wanted to know so that I can apply the same strategy at home. Not to question if you are teaching him or what you are teaching him. It's more of, I want to learn as well so that I can help him at home. But they didn't answer me. And this is something that this is a revised version. Previously, there was no taught self-regulation strategy wording there either, because I asked, you need to teach them and not just measuring them, right? Are you working on teaching him how to get started, how to sustain some of the strategies? So they were forced to put something to show that the teaching part I felt. And then if I pushing more to ask exactly what they are teaching, I felt I was already losing the battle, because it's something that I'm pushing to get.
Well, I would say, you know your son the best, so you should never feel guilty about pushing to get what you believe is in his best interest. I mean, I will say that there are times where you do need to come to an agreement point where maybe you're negotiating, but you should always be able to do what is the best for him.
And then, yes, sorry if I could ask another goal that related to reading stamina. So he has pretty good reading skill and he can read a magazine article pretty okay. But the teacher start noticing that he has hard time with chapter book reading. So that has something to do with the ADHD sustaining the attention. And he could be reading 40 pages and not able to comprehend much. So I'm thinking what kind of goal that would also capture the stamina from the duration perspective, and also capturing the comprehension part, not just, sitting there for 20 minutes pretending to read, but also able to understand, getting that comprehension.
So,
Yeah.
Lee, can I just ask you a question before we jump into the reading? So I know this is about your student being able to begin a task. Is he able to complete the task? Because initiating and completing a task are two different skills. So if he can't initiate, he's not going to be able to complete the task.
He's not able to. And I felt maybe the teacher was just trying to tackle that part first.
And
Okay.
I
that would
see
be
where you're
okay to
going.
tackle that part, but that's where you would need those objectives, that he will initiate that task by the end of the first quarter. And then your next objective would be that he will stay on task for an assignment for 5 minutes by the second quarter.
Got it. That
so
makes
you're
sense. So
step
that's
up.
the right sequence. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
And Lisa, I will just say, don't back down, right? Continue to ask for that data, continue to ask the questions that you ask. And don't let teams, and I'll kind of use the word bully, but don't let them sort of make you feel like the questions that you're asking are stupid, because they're not. Like, I know Lisa or Amy and I, we're both, special education advocates, and we don't know what this goal is saying, right? So we are trained in doing this, and an IEP goal should sort of, it should pass a dummy test, right? And so anybody should be able to pick up this goal and say, oh, this is exactly what this is measuring. Oh, this is what his, self-regulation strategies are. We have no idea what this goal is measuring. I mean, we know what it's measuring, but we have no idea the specifics of it, right? And
Yes.
so continue to ask those questions, send them. I would say if you ask them in an email, or if you ask them at a meeting, follow up in an email so that you have those, specific questions and their answers in written form. I think it's always good, anything that you ask, either if it's a conversation over the phone or in a meeting, that you follow it up with an email and say, oh, I understand based on our meeting, this is what you're saying, blah, blah, blah. So that you have that record, right, of what has been asked, what has been communicated. I know that's a little bit off of this topic, but I just want to throw that in there, especially for anybody that if you're asking questions in meetings and they're giving you pushback, follow up with an email and say, oh, per our meeting, I asked this, what is, my understanding from our meeting is this. Or, just be very specific, and, you can say, I reiterate, my request from the meeting, I have questions about this goal. Just lay it all out, even if you talk to them in person. Hopefully you're recording meetings, because you're allowed to record if you're in Virginia, right? That you are recording those meetings, but that you follow up with everything in an email, so that way it is documented. And I apologize, Amy and Samantha, for kind of going off topic. I just want to make sure that everybody on this call knows that, right? I know a lot of our clients, right? Between myself and you guys as your own, consultant advocacy business, a lot of our clients before this didn't know that they could record meetings, or, oh, I had a conversation with the teacher, or, oh, I attended this meeting, but nothing is in writing. You want to make sure everything you have is in writing, so you can go back and follow upon that and say, oh, well, in our email exchange during this time, you know, this is what you said. These were my questions. These were your responses.
And I
Any
will also
difference
say that
between- Oh,
that
go
it's
ahead.
it's the team's responsibility, it's the educator's responsibility or the therapist's responsibility if it's a speech or occupational therapy goal, a physical therapy goal, to make sure that you understand what they are targeting, how they're going to collect the data, and any other thing revolved around that goal. If you do not understand what they are saying they're going to do, or how they're going to do the work on the goal or collect the data on the goal, do not sign that IEP. I don't care if you have to have 5 meetings to make them explain it to you in a way that's understandable to you. It is their responsibility. That was the first thing we talked about. Clear and understandable. That has to be part of the goal. And I would say any goal that has that many parentheses, throw that thing out the window, because they were also adding additional criteria inside those parentheses. So that goal was a hot mess.
Yeah, okay.
And I just put in the
was-
chat that if anybody's not familiar in VA, we have partial consent, right? So you can partially consent to an IEP.
Absolutely.
A lot of times districts will say, oh, you agree or you don't agree, but you can partially consent. So just so everybody knows that in Virginia.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Okay,
very
guys.
helpful.
Stila, or somebody was jumping in. Is somebody else jumping in, or was that Lisa?
One hopefully quick, what's the difference between the IEP in middle school than the IEP in elementary school? Can I nothing, the same format, the same
Yeah.
Just
the-
different
criteria.
goals.
The only thing that
different.
might be added, depending on your student's age, is the transition plan.
Yeah.
But in 6th grade, probably not yet. It doesn't mean it can't, but. Okay, so we are approaching 9 o'clock, and I know that we may have some other people. I know Sela, you were coming off mute, but I'm gonna have to say that we're probably gonna have to wrap up for tonight. If you have further questions about goals, or you want somebody to take a look at your child's IEP goals or present levels, please don't hesitate to contact Amy or myself. We can certainly share some ways that we have that with services, or again, email us, because we have Parent Advocacy Center contacts and ways that you can also look into it that way. So Stila, I apologize. Am I saying your name correctly?
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Were you wanting to say something?
No, I'm good. I'm
Oh.
good. Everything was excellent.
Awesome. Okay, great. I just saw you coming off mute, so I wanted to make sure you had a chance to chime in if that was something you needed. Okay, great. Well, again, we appreciate everybody's time, and we look forward to doing other presentations with you guys in the future. And have a great night.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Stop the recording. There we go.